Alright, it's time for you to hate me in the comment section below, because today we're doing a tier list on patch 11.2 Ghost of Koresh PTR based on every DPS spec in the game. Remember, this list will change as the weeks go by, and as we get closer to release next month, we're simply here ranking these specs for both Mythic Plus and Rating combined, and rating them from best to worst. Sorry about the technical difficulties, ladies and gentlemen. Starting off first with a bang, though, we have the Arcane Mage. And the truth is Blizzard did it again, man. They made Arcane Mage an absolute powerhouse heading into the season. Compared to, the other two Mage specs, they didn't really get any changes at all heading into the new season. But their tier set bonus with Spellslinger is phenomenal. It causes them to generate stacks of Arcane Harmony so fast that you get them so quickly you don't even know how to spend them fast enough, and it feels really solid. You combine that with stuff like Nether Position, your Touch of the Magi windows, combine that with your Arcane, Surge, your big goes, and things are just gonna die right in front of your face when you activate it all at once. And it's very, very smooth right now, and it's very fun. Constantly, you're just shooting out these 10+ million damage AoE arcane barrages, and it's very satisfying, man. I will say the tier set is mostly what's shooting them up by a mile. The gameplay style doesn't change. It's not completely degenerate gameplay, and I do think it's pretty good. I would say it's gonna get slightly nerfed, but Arcane Mage is just in a great spot, man. They got everything in their arsenal at the highest tier possible. They deal incredible priority damage, very consistent AoE. They performed exceptionally well in the raid testing. They're very good in Mythic Plus right now. Solid defensives amongst one of the best in the game. Great utility, good control. You name it, Arcane Mage has it, and it's the reason why they're probably the best spec in the game right now. That's not just completely broken in terms of numbers. So Arcane Mage gotta be number one, and I don't even think it's close. Moving on next, we do have the Balanced Druid. Now, something to note is that with their tier set, your builds are very cookie cutter, though. That's one thing about Balanced Druid. You have an AoE Mythic Plus build with Elun's Chosen, and then you have your single target raid build with Keeper of the Grove. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think that's okay. But to put it plainly, Balance is doing phenomenal damage on both their tier sets right now. In both aspects of the game, Mythic Plus and Rating, their damage is incredible. They're killing it right now. One thing to note, though, during raid testing with their Keeper of the Grove tier set, it was dealing some kind of degenerate style of gameplay, and you're going to hear that throughout this video a lot. Degenerate. When we say something is degenerate, it means it's not morally right. It's not justified. It's not correct. It's not balanced. Things feel very off. Now, you can see even on the numbers and some, stats and the graphs here, that the second that they get their Dryad out, they're shooting like 20, 30, 40 million damage Star Surges, and something like that is just degenerate. It's not normal. So I do see this getting adjusted in the nearby future. But if it doesn't get nerfed, the Balance is absolutely one of the best raw DPS specs in the entire game. I love their Solar Beam inside of Mythic Plus 2. You group everybody up with maybe a Vengeance Demon Hunter. You stun them all in there. Then you put the beam, and it's a really good CC for casters, which is nice. I also love the Mark of the Wild for versatility, the Battle Res. They got some good utility going on. My one issue with Druid overall is they got crappy defensives. And I think they also have the worst class-specific talent tree probably in the game. So I do think Druid needs work overall. But if it wasn't for their damage, I do think they would be in trouble. But their damage right now is just phenomenal. For Mythic Plus, you have those AoE Star Surges going on with the Elun's Chosen. You're just chunking things so easily. You apply Moonfire, Sunfire to everything. You go about your normal rotation of getting into Lunar Eclipse. You're spamming Starfire and then Starfall. Basic cookie cutter rotation, and everything is pretty much gonna die. So I think anyone can pick up Balanced Druid. Their damage numbers are great. Their tier sets are even better. So very, very good spec right now. They're amongst the GOAT tier. Absolutely. Moving on to our last GOAT spot, we do have, surprisingly, the Enhancement Shaman. Now, I'll say it straight up and simple. I think both their hero talent tree tier sets are doing fantastic. But in particular, Stormbringer is out of control right now. They also just reworked the Ascendance window for Enhancement Shaman so that now it can cast your Tempest ability when you Wind Strike instead of just Chain Lightning or Lightning Bolt. And that's made the rotation so easy for Enhancement Shaman to just deal stupid numbers. So anytime you get in your Ascendance window, you're literally just spamming Wind Strike, and it'll cast Tempest for you as well as these chunky Chain Lightnings. and you're just sitting there spamming one ability and everything's just going to die. So it's really hilarious in my opinion. You're also able to get an Ascendance a lot more often due to your tier set bonus, which is fun. And overall, Enhancement Shaman is just fantastic right now. Their numbers are very, very solid. You combine that with the fact that Enhancement Shaman brings some of the most utility in the game. You have your raid buff, a really short cooldown kick, tons of knockups, interrupts, CC, crowd controls, good buffs. You got a Bloodlust. I mean, you name it, they got it from a design standpoint. Enhancement Shaman is amongst one of the best in the game, but if you combine that with ridiculous damage, yeah, no, they're going to be one of the best specs out there. And I think they can easily take up, Unholy's spot in the top 3 for Mythic Plus this season because Unholy got gutted. So I think Enhancement Shaman is going to do fantastic this season. So far, if they don't get nerfed, if anything, it's going to be them, Shadow Priest potentially, or maybe even Frost DK. We'll see. But overall, Enhancement Shaman, I'm loving them. Their damage is ridiculous. Fantastic spec heading into the new season. Moving on to the start of our A+ tier, we do have the Shadow Priest. Man, I'm loving Shadow Priest right now. This spec got a good amount of changes. Of course, like usual, heading into a new season, and I think the rework was a massive step in the right direction. I thought they did a lot of good things. They changed a good amount of their talents. They updated a lot of abilities. They gave them 2 charges of Shadow Crash, which, yes, rejoice Shadow Priest. It allows you to spread Vampiric Touch very, very easily, which then means that you have Psychic Link going on everybody, and then we're dealing our damage way more consistently than usual. Not only that, they added some more talents to add some shadowy apparitions to your rotation and get that going with Shadow Ward Pain, which is really nice. And listen, overall, your AoE damage for Mythic Plus, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to let you know now, it's looking very good. Not only that, during raid testing, they were easily amongst one of the best specs in the game with their Void Weaver hero talent tree. Your Void Blast damage is absolutely out of control on single target. The tier set is phenomenal for Void Weaver. Your Void Torrent is dealing tons of damage, like 20 million damage per cast. Not only that, you get a lot of resources very quickly due to the rework on some of their talents. So Shadow Priest from a rotational and just numerical standpoint is incredible right now. I'm going to take that. I think Shadow Priest is doing great. You get these juicy entropic rift windows that deal so much damage. You combine that with your Psychic Link. Both of those equal out to like 45% of your total damage in Mythic Plus, which is funny. And then your Void Blast is dealing a ton of damage for single targets. So it looks like they have all bases covered right now. They have good utility. They bring a lot of damage. I mean, what else do you need? And Shadow Priest is looking good. I think they could be one of the best specs heading into a new season for sure. And I'm really comfortable saying that I would like Shadow Priest to be in the meta for right now heading into a new season for sure. So shout out Shadow Priest. Moving on next, surprisingly, we do have the Beast Mastery Hunter. This is one of those specs right now that does have that little bit of degenerate gameplay tied to it. Their tier set is shooting them up through the moon right now with Pack Leader. Whenever you summon one of your beasts through the Pack Leader hero talent, you also summon, your Stampede, which is their new tier set, and it deals a crap load of AoE damage. It's shooting the numbers up so high to easily among some of the best in the game in like heavy AoE pack scenarios, which is really cool. So as of right now, they are blasting. I'm not sure if this is something that's going to stick around because once again, it's degenerate. It's like by far your #1 damaging ability when it comes to, your overall standpoint. So I do see this getting adjusted again, heading up in the next couple of weeks, but we have to name it right now. Beast Mastery Hunter's damage overall is substantially higher than most classes, and the gameplay is pretty fun. And I think it's very thematic with their hero talent tree combining with their normal, spec being Beast Mastery. You're summoning a lot of pets, you're dealing a lot of damage, and I think that's a good thing. Overall, just to put it plain and simple and wrap this up, their damage is nuclear right now. They're fantastic in Mythic Plus for AoE. They did one of the best for the raid testing that was just happening. They're a very easy spec to play, very mobile, simple, and effective. Of course, with Hunter, though, you have to remember that their defensive capabilities are pretty bad, and they don't really bring any utility to the group. So let's say these damage numbers get tuned and they get nerfed, you could see some issues like usual for Hunter heading into the new season though. But overall, as of right now, their damage is great. We'll see how things look moving forward as we head closer to release now though. Moving on next, we do have to talk about one of my favorite specs on the PTR, which is the Frost Death Knight. When it comes to all the reworks heading into the new season, I think they did by far the best with Frost Death Knight. They did so many good changes. Empowered Rune Weapon having 2 charges, and it deals some damage. It gives you some smoothing out of the rotation by giving you some on-demand killing machine procs. Like usual, you got those massive 45-second go windows combining your, Exterminate, your Pillar of Frost, and then occasionally your Breath of Sindragosa, which they reworked again, by the way. It's very, very simple, easy, and it feels so good, man. Now you can use your runic power abilities during your Breath of Sindragosa windows, and it makes the rotation super fun, man. I can't believe this hasn't been a thing for the longest time. I love using the new Frostbane ability during my Breath windows to just AoE pop all of my Razor Ice and deal a good amount of damage, and it's so much fun. The spec feels a lot more like Enhancement Shaman now, if you've ever played Enhancement. But it's got that fresh coat of Blizzard paint on it, and everything feels really polished, and things feel very good. And honestly, it really surprised me how much fun Frost Death Knight is. And honestly, I'm absolutely going to pick one up in this next season. It's just way too much fun to pass up on. The damage for Frost Death Knight is absolutely there. They do lose some stuff with not having Abomination Limb anymore, which does suck. But I think for sure Frost Death Knight is going to be one of the best melee DPS heading into the new season. Fantastic defensives, great damage, good for raid and Mythic Plus. I'm excited to pick them up next season, and anyone else would be too. Moving on next, though, we do have the emo boy, the Havoc Demon Hunter. Now listen, Havoc didn't get any changes heading into the new season. That's pretty obvious, but that doesn't mean you should overlook Havoc Demon Hunter. Both of their tier sets, to put it plain and simple, they're phenomenal. They're freaking amazing. They're amongst some of the best in the entire game, and they're shooting their damage numbers up like crazy. In particular, though, I'm really liking Felsguard. The tier set for Felsguard is fantastic. It buffs the Immolation aura, and it gives you a nice 20% damage increase as well. So if you combine all of this together with your Demon Surge windows and your Inertia, you get like a 38% bonus to damage during your Demon Surge windows, and oh my god, in uncapped AoE, your damage is absolutely out of control. You're putting I-beams out, those Rage Fires, the Demon Surges, all at 38% bonus damage. Oh, everything's just going to melt, and it's super satisfying fun. So when it comes to Felsguard, I really like it. Also, Eldrazi Reaver, there's fantastic potential there as well. Personally, I don't really like it, though, because it's a bit more complicated than Felsguard. I like just going in there, popping all my buttons, and going crazy. With this spec, it's a lot more prepping and planning, but from a Mythic Plus standpoint and Raid, you got to know their damage is very, very high right now. It's very consistent. It's a simple spec that's relatively easy to pick up amongst one of the easier ones in the game, and both their tier sets are great, which means you have good build variety. So I like them a lot. I think from the role that they can bring to a group, they're very effective. The only issue is that Vengeance Demon Hunter is the best tank in the game right now on the PTR. Them and Protection Warriors are crazy, but I think that's probably going to get adjusted. There's some degenerate gameplay happening for Vengeance, but overall, I'm loving Havoc. If you've ever enjoyed Havoc Demon Hunter, now could absolutely be the time to pick them up. They're very fun. The damage numbers are there. Very wide potential for build variety. What else do you need? Great spec so far. Moving on next, we do have to talk about the Demonology Warlock. Something to note about Demonology, they did just get buffed a few days ago, and surprisingly, their damage is incredible now across the board for rating and Mythic Plus. Now, I don't want to get bashed in the comment section below because I know from a raw damage standpoint, they're in the GOAT tier. They're amongst Arcane, Balance, and Enhancement. I know that, but it's so blatantly obvious that this is degenerate gameplay. And once again, what I mean by that is that one or two abilities is dealing most of their damage. It's degenerate. It's not normal, meaning that it's not morally correct. It's not balanced. And I know I've said this a dozen times, so aside from that, though, my issue with Demonology is that I don't really love their tier set bonuses. I think they're kind of bland. I think they're unthematic for the spec overall. Your tier set is most of your damage for Soul Harvester, and it converts your Hand of Gul'dan as one of your hardest hitters, and to me, that's not really fun. That's not really fun when it comes to Demonology. I want all of my demons to deal most of my damage. I think for Season 2, Liberation of the Undermine, having your hounds deal most of your damage with all the AoE bites, I thought that was cool. I thought it was thematic. I thought it was consistent, and it fit into Demonology. I'm not loving the tier set. I want all my demons to deal most of my damage, so I'm not really loving it so far. Remember, though, for Warlock in general, you don't really bring much utility other than just Hellstones, and that's about it. You got specs in the game like Elemental Shaman, Ret Paladin, Arcane Mage, Shadow Priest that bring more utility, that can bring similar damage, because I see this getting nerfed very, very soon in the nearby future. It's crazy degenerate. Let me get some degenerate gameplays in the comment section below, by the way. Moving at the start of the A tier now, we do have to talk about the second mage spec, the Fire Mage. Overall, listen, I think Fire Mage is actually in a really good and balanced, safe spot right now. I don't think they're as good as Arcane. They're better than a lot of specs in general. What I really love about Fire Mage is that they have a good amount of build variety, and that both of their hero talent tree tier sets, they're both effective, and you could use them in a wide variety of content, which is fun. You have a lot of flavor in that, and there's a lot of potential for build variety, which is really good. Frostfire, you shoot out these massive meteor windows during your combustion where like you bring down your meteor, a bunch of comet storms come out, and it's a ton of AoE damage, which is fun. So the whole goal is trying to get that on your combustion windows as much as possible so you get guaranteed crits and a lot of damage. But with Sun Fury, I prefer this spec because it's just a lot more straightforward. You do all your big damaging abilities during your combustion, and then right when your combustion ends, you shoot into hypothermia state and you're able to just spam Flame Strike over and over and deal a crap ton of AoE damage, which in my opinion is super fun. So one thing to note though, with Fire Mage, it's very difficult to play. It's a very hard class to master, one of the hardest in the game. So you could mess up and pretty much screw up your damage numbers for a while if you don't know what you're doing. It's a spec that takes a lot of experience and time to learn. But I think with some, experience and practice, it's a fantastic spec in the game. Don't forget what mage, you bring your utility with your, Arcane Intellect. You have your crowd control, which is crazy. Some of the best defensive toolkit in the entire game. Overall, I really like mage. I think fire's in a great, balanced, healthy spot. And I think they're going to be A tier heading into the new season. For sure. Moving on next, though, we have a very heavy hitter with the Marksmanship Hunter. This spec got some really nice changes heading into the new season to sort of smoothen out the gameplay. Every time you use Explosive Shot, you get your lock and load, which is really nice for getting those instant aim shots out. And the rotation is very, very smooth overall for Marksmanship in general, amongst some of the smoothest in the entire game, I would say. They also buffed up Precise Shots a bit. And heading into the new season, they also updated Dark Ranger, which it was doing very good, but it was degenerate at the time. They nerfed it, it got adjusted, and now it's doing a lot less damage. I think they were really heavy-handed with the nerfs on Dark Ranger, so I'm hoping it gets slightly buffed up a little. But something to note is that their Sentinel hero talent tree did not get adjusted, and boy, oh boy, is it still dealing fantastic damage right now. Pretty much whenever your Sentinel comes out due to shooting Barrage, you will get your Sentinel to come out, deal a bunch of AoE damage, but it allows you for your aim shots to deal ridiculous damage numbers. You combine that during trick shots and your true shot window. I'm hitting aim shots that shoot for over 20 million damage in one aim shot, and it is so nice. It's just ricocheting around, destroying enemies, and the damage is absolutely out of control. I don't know if this is going to be something that sticks around. It might get slightly nerfed. Once again, when we're talking about Hunter, something that I always worried about is that they don't really bring any utility at all, and they lack in the defensive department. So if their damage is not good, Hunter will be lower on the tier list for Mythic Plus specifically, for sure. They performed one of the best in the rating testing so far, so that's something to note. Marksmanship Hunter is dominating in the raid test. I'm worried about them once again for Mythic Plus heading into the new season, because if they lack utility, they lack defensive capability, and then they go ahead and nerf them when it comes to their damage, Hunter's going to be in a pretty bad spot, so yes, I am worried about them when it comes to that. Moving on next, though, we have everyone's favorite spec, man, the Retribution Paladin, one of the most popular classes in the game. Now, to be honest, there's not really much to say. They didn't get any adjustments heading into the new season, but it's just a spec that's very simple, and it deals a crap load of damage, and it's very easy to play. They bring a ridiculous amount of utility. They got all their blessings, their crowd controls, their auras, all their different abilities to save the party, like lay on hands and bubbles and stuff. This spec is fantastic to bring for a Mythic Plus group. Both of their tier sets are amazing as well. Herald of the Sun, you're just dealing ridiculous amounts of damage with Divine Storm, and you're just chunking mobs in an AoE standpoint from Mythic Plus. And then you have Templar, which allows you to have 100% uptime now on your Empyrean Hammers, because guess what? Now you can spam your Hammer of Light ability pretty much 2 or 3 times every 25 seconds, which is absolutely out of control and super fun from a gameplay perspective. So absolutely, I'm loving Retribution Paladin right now. With all that being said, their rotation is very, very simple. The damage is amongst one of the better in the game. It's not like crazy the best in the game, but it's absolutely above average. They bring crazy utility. They good defensives. They're great to bring for Mythic Plus. And I would say overall, I think Retribution Paladin has, potential to be one of the better specs in the game from a Mythic Plus and rating potential combined. Really liking Ret Paladin. They're looking great. Moving on next, though, we have the Protector of the Elements, the Elemental Shaman. Now, when we're talking about Elemental Shaman, this is a spec that's gone under the radar for a good amount of time. But you have to understand, as a ranged DPS, they bring crazy utility. Not only that, they bring fantastic burst damage potential inside those Ascendance windows. If you combine both those together with, consistent DPS across the board, Elemental Shaman feels great on the PTR. It's very obvious in the upcoming season, they have 2 hero talent trees that are designated for specific content. One for raiding, one for Mythic Plus. Now, with Stormbringer, you get the occasional extra proc to go into Ascendance again, which for Elemental is phenomenal. And then for Farseer, you have the ability to summon out even more Ancestors to come help you in combat, which thematically is very cool, and it's decently effective right now. They performed about average in the raid test, but I'm just going to let you know, I really love the gameplay style for Elemental Shaman, specifically in Mythic Plus. They're dealing really, really good damage. I love getting into those extra Ascendance windows to deal a bunch of Lava Burst, AoE Earthquakes, and rotationally design and throughput standpoint, Elemental is one of the best specs in the game, I would say. Damage number-wise, they're a bit lower than I would like, but they fill out so many gaps for a group if you need them to. They have endless crowd control with, you know, their knockups, their CC. They have very consistent AoE damage with incredible priority damage. They bring Bloodlust, short cooldown kick. I really, really like Elemental Shaman, and they're a great class so far heading into the new season. And then finally for the A tier, surprisingly, man, we have the Survival Hunter. Now, from a core rotational perspective, I enjoy survival. You know, you build up those tip of the spear passives, you amplify your damage on some of your hardest hitting abilities like Explosive Shot, Fury of the Eagle, and of course, Wildfire Bombs now. Now, this is the season where Survival Hunter's Wildfire Bombs is absolutely going to break the internet. The Sentinel tier set is causing them to deal such stupid damage with this ability to where occasionally I'm tossing out these Wildfire Bombs that hit for like 11 to 12 million damage in AoE by simply just pressing one button. It is so funny, but to be honest, it is degenerate gameplay. It's not balanced. It's not normal. They need to buff up some other areas of them while nerfing this slightly because it's absolutely out of control. If you take this ridiculous damage numbers out of the equation, once again, I'm worried about Hunter because they don't bring utility. They lack defensive capability, especially as a melee DPS, and I do think Survival Hunter in a general standpoint could fall to that lower tier once again if their damage gets nerfed. So we'll have to see how this ends up overall in the new season. Moving on next to the start of the B tier, sadly, we got to bring up the Destruction Warlock. Now listen, I'm a major suck up to this spec. They were my main all of Season 2, and I really, really enjoyed them. But I gotta say, I would have really liked some changes heading to new season because the gameplay, the build variety, and the hero talent tree selection, it's all exactly the same from Season 2 top to bottom. Now, don't get me wrong, I can go in Mythic Plus right now with Destruction Warlock and hit some ridiculous numbers on the PTR. Warlock in general was really struggling throughout the raid testing, and they were one of the worst classes overall in the raid test, and it really bothered me. That's something I didn't like and wasn't really normal to see from me, you know, playing them the last 6 months. So don't forget, they only really bring Healthstones as group utility. So the problem is that if Warlock's not dealing fantastic damage, they're going to drop in the tiers. It's very simple. They don't bring utility like Enhancement Shaman, Balanced Druid, Shadow Priest. They're not really group support reliant. They're more like the carry that's supposed to deal ridiculous damage. And if they're not doing that, they're going to drop in tiers. It's very, very simple. Don't get me wrong, I don't mind this gameplay style for Destruction, but the problem is their damage numbers just simply aren't where they were compared to last season, and that's going to cause them to drop. Moving on next, we have one of the wild cards, which is Feral Druid. Now, I actually don't mind Feral Druid. I don't think they're in a bad spot. They have some of the highest burst damage so far on the PTR for both AoE and single target. I think the problem is that they're very, very cooldown reliant, and there could be points outside of your cooldowns where things feel very, very stiff. Things feel slow. You're energy starved, you're not getting procs for Ravage, and things don't feel great. With their tier set for Druid of the Claw, you could deal some pretty ridiculous damage numbers, but it's also RNG percentage based. You have a 40% chance to cast Ravage again after you cast it, and not only that, for their 2 set, they kind of double down on the RNG aspect where you get a buff after you cast Ravage. So if you're not getting much Ravages out, you're not getting access to your 2 set or your 4 set, and that's pretty scary. Don't get me wrong, if you're getting lucky and you're getting a lot of procs, your damage is going to be absolutely out of this world, but if you're not, it's going to shoot pretty damn low, which doesn't really feel great in my opinion. I don't like RNG being attached to my rotation. I think that's a pretty terrible gameplay design, and I don't love it. Not only that, Balanced Druid and Restoration Druid are doing phenomenal right now, and Guardian's on their way up, so looking at Feral Druid, they're probably the weakest out of all the Druid specs heading into new season, and that's kind of worrisome in my opinion. I like their utility with Mark of the Wild. They got a battle res, good crowd control. I just really hate that they don't have much consistency outside of their cooldowns, and then they also have really, really low APM outside of their cooldowns as well, which bothers me. And the energy starving issue is kind of crappy as well. So Other than that, I don't mind Feral Druid. Okay, moving on next to the very first rogue spec, we have Assassination Rogue. Now, Assassination actually didn't get any changes heading into the new season, and not only that, their Fatebound hero talent tree is pretty much garbage. It doesn't really work. I don't like it at all. So right off the bat, you didn't get any changes, and one of your tier sets suck ass. So that's already worrying me. Through the raid testing, though, I will say Assassination actually did pretty damn good. They were absolutely above average. Not anything insane, though, but they were just above average, which is okay. I think the Deathstalker tier set can be very good for Assassination. I think it definitely helps them rotationally and in their gameplay aspect, and it feels pretty good. But the problem is that their hero talent trees in general and the tier sets are very passive. It doesn't do anything to spark innovation, change, or much excitement in the gameplay. If you've played Assassination Rogue before, nothing has changed about this spec since Season 1. You're going to go in there and do the same exact shit that you've been doing. You're going to garrote everybody in an AoE rotation. You're going to apply your Ruptures to everyone, Crimson Tempest, get your Caustic Splatter going, and then you're doing your big Chunky and Venoms. That's literally it. That's the rotation. Nothing has changed. It's the same exact thing. So if Assassination Rogue isn't dealing absolutely absurd damage numbers, they're going to drop on this list substantially. And guess what? They're not dealing S tier damage. They're dropping on the list. They don't bring much utility. The defensives have gotten better with the integration of Feint being improved. But overall, I'm not loving the standpoint of Rogue from a general standpoint. If their damage isn't going to be phenomenal. You know, you have classes out there that are getting so many adjustments like Mage and Death Knight, and I feel like Rogue hasn't been adjusted at all from the entirety of the expansion, and they've kind of been left in the dark, metaphorically and figuratively, so I'm not loving them. Their damage is okay. They're just slightly above average damage, no real utility, average defensives. That's really about it for me. Moving on next, we do have the Devastation Evoker. Now, I do think Devastation Evoker could be higher on this list, but I want to preface this very clearly. I think their damage is phenomenal during their cooldown windows. They're not what they were last season in a raiding environment. I want to make that very clear because they were probably the best in the game overall, but technically they did get worse. I'm going to say it up front. I'm not really sure where to place them on this list because I'm not that good with Devastation. I'll say it frankly. During my cooldown windows, I could deal some ridiculous damage, but outside of them, I don't really feel great. I think both their tier sets are great for Flame Shaper and Scale Commander. I think they're both designed really well. It's just outside of the cooldown windows and where my mastery was at its peak, where I was getting really, the most value out of it, I started to see this spec fall off a little bit, and I wasn't really liking it personally. I'm not saying they deserve to be in the B tier. I think they're higher. I'm just not exactly sure where to place them because I'm going to be upfront and honest. I'm not that good with them. So if you're a Devastation main, let me know about it in the comment section below. I can't really judge them. So Kuzi, if you're watching the video, let me know where you think they are in the comment section below. Moving on next, though, to the next spec, we do have Windwalker. Now, if this tier set was based on just class design, based off rotations and their tier set, Windwalker would be in the GOAT tier. I think they did such a fantastic design with them rotationally and based off their tier set. They are super, super fun. From a damage perspective, they are definitely leaning into that degenerate style of gameplay with the Shadow Pan tier set. It is absolutely degenerate. Your flurry strikes are like 30+% damage overall for you. It is gonna get nerfed, absolutely. So I'm disregarding Shadow Pan at the moment, and we're going to Conduit of Celestials. And I'm going to be honest, Conduit of Celestials tier set is so much fun. It's one of the most fun tier sets I've ever played in World of Warcraft. Pretty much, your cooldown recovery rate is doubled, so you get all of your abilities back faster. Your Fist of Fury cast time is reduced by like 50%. And the idea is that you pretty much just go Super Saiyan, everything goes super speed, and everything feels very, very smooth and buttery, which is great. The damage numbers are there for raiding. They're amongst one of the best in the game when it comes to the early raid testing, so that's really good news. But I think they're going to fall off in Mythic Plus yet again. They are limited in their rotation in an AoE cap scenario, so that sucks. They're not going to deal as much damage as specs like Arcane Mage, Enhancement Shaman, Balance Druid, Shadow Priest. They're just not going to deal as much damage. The one saving grace for the spec is that once again, in the raid testing, they did phenomenal, so I'm really excited. I'm just not loving them for Mythic Plus. Moving on next, we have the Swashbuckling Outlaw Rogue. Now, Outlaw really only got changes to Killing Spree heading into the new season, which looks very cool now. It's a nice little visual, and it deals some good damage. However, though, compared to some other melee DPS specs in the game, like Frost DK, Havoc Demon Hunter, Survival Hunter, they're just falling behind in terms of raw DPS. I like to think of Outlaw Rogue as that gnat that just continues to bug you and consistently do bullshit right in your face over and over. They're very consistent, but there's no real burst damage involved. It's just consistency across the board, and that's about it. When it comes to their hero talents, I might have a grudge against Rogue because I really don't like the designs of any of them. It's going to be Fatebound for Raid, and then Trickster, of course, is going to be your Mythic Plus spec. If you want me to be completely upfront, they feel boring. I don't like them. I'm not crazy about them at all. Compared to some other specs I've played in the game, like Arcane Mage, Enhancement Shaman, Marksmanship Hunter, Fire Mage, like, it's just not as fun. It doesn't feel as impactful, so I'm just not in love with it. Once again, I worry about Rogue also from a utility standpoint, as they don't really bring shit to the party. They have some decent crowd control with Blind, their short cooldown kick, a couple of little stuns here or there. Other than that, they don't have anything. When it comes to Outlaw Rogue in general, I'm not trying to sound like a hater, but they got the highest APM in the entire game. You're spamming abilities. If you don't have uptime, you're not going to deal good damage. You don't have any priority damage because you're literally just Blade Flurry spamming over and over again as all your damage, and I just don't think it's a good design. Personally, I don't like it. I know there's some phenomenal Outlaw Rogue players out there that want to shut me up like Chris, but I just don't love it. Spamming these buttons over and over again, it's not something for me. After playing every single other spec in the game, the design for Outlaw Rogue, in my opinion, is just not great. Moving on next, we do have a class that definitely saw some improvements, which is the Frost Mage. Once again, Frost has improved from last season. That is definitely a plus. They were bottom tier for Mythic Plus end rating, and I don't think they're necessarily doing bad right now. The problem is that Arcane and Fire Mage are doing really great. So once again, Frost Mage is going to lag behind substantially. They did see some improvements to their mastery, which means that their glacial spike damage is absolutely out of control, which is really, really good. Not only that, I think both their hero talent trees, they have potential. But I'm really enjoying playing, personally, Frostfire right now. You come out, you summon your Comet Storm, it also summons a Meteor, you deal a bunch of AoE damage, you're also shooting out these Pyroblasts whenever you shoot out Glacial Spike, and it feels good for Raid, feels good for Mythic Plus. So for both testing for Raiding and Mythic Plus, they're doing pretty well. Once again, though, it's just not as high as Fire and Arcane, so they have to drop in terms of value on this list. The content I am worried about them mostly, though, is going to be Mythic Plus. Most of your damage is going to get cut off because the only way you're really strong is that 2 to 3 target cleave with Glacial Spike, Splitting Ice. The only damage that's really non-AoE capped is your Frozen Orb as well as Blizzard. And your tanks, if you're not really coordinating with them, they can move them out of that consistently, and that's a pain in the ass. So that would frustrate me as a Frost Mage. Other than that, though, I think they're definitely getting there in terms of viability. They did see some improvements, and overall, I would say I'm excited for them. I'm going to give them a shot heading into the new season, so we'll see how they feel in the upcoming Raid testing as well as more Mythic Plus testing moving forward. Moving on next, we do have a little bit of a surprise. I think Augmentation is getting better. I think they're on the up and up. They were once, of course, overpowered and absolutely broken. But I'm going to be honest, I'm a sucker for this spec. I think this spec has potential to be S tier. They have everything in their toolkit to be one of the best specs in the game. It's just a numbers tuning game. They're just not doing well numerically right now. I think they got nerfed to way too hard heading into Season 2. We haven't seen them at all, and I think Blizzard's maybe either going to rework them or just slightly buff them heading into the new season continuously. I will say, however, though, something that surprised me is that their personal damage got very, very good with this new tier set, which I really like, and I think they're on the up and up, man. I think we have 4 to 5 weeks left of PTR to where they could get buffed, and I'm telling you guys, mark my words, they could potentially be meta again, because if this class gets some slight adjustments, some slight tuning, they could be dominating very, very quickly. I enjoyed their tier set bonus for both their specs. You know, as particularly the Scale Commander, you summon those other Evokers to come help you in battle. I think thematically it's awesome. Numerically, it helps you with your Eruption damage. You're dealing nuclear numbers whenever you do your Deep Breath, and it's a lot of fun. So I wouldn't write this spec out just yet. I feel like design standpoint, they're a lot better designs than some of the other specs in the game right now. Numerically, they're just low. So sadly, we gotta get some adjustments on that. Moving on next, though, we do have the two-handed Juggernaut, the Arms Warrior. Now, I'm going to say this very bluntly. I'm going to be very brutally honest. Through the raid testing, they were bottom tier. In Mythic Plus, there's a lot better specs out there in terms of damage, plain and simple. Utility, they don't bring much. And the issue is that if Warrior is not dealing a ton of damage, they bring no utility to a party or raid. And I'm going to tell you upfront and honest, if I see an Enhancement Shaman, Arcane Mage, or Balanced Druid, there is no chance I don't go with those specs over the Arms Warrior. There's just no shot. When you're trying to really push those keys and be consistent in either raid or Mythic Plus, Arms is just not going to fill that niche right now. Not only that, you combine the fact with that, you know, Protection Warrior is S tier right now. They're amongst one of the best tanks in the game. Yeah, it definitely lowers the value of Arms Warrior and Fury Warrior in general. But man, right now, I'm just so worried about Warrior in general. I think Arms and Fury need reworks, overhauls, top to bottom. I guess we'll talk about that another time, though. The spec didn't see any changes heading to new season, which once again is worrisome. I do like their tier set with Colossus, but that's about it. I love the Demolish burst windows and, you know, getting those at least somewhat chunky Mortal Strikes out. But I'm not expecting anything big out of Arms or Fury Warrior. I'm really worried about the specs overall in terms of damage, and I'm hoping they get some adjustments over the next couple of weeks because their damage is just not there. It's not pushing them over that hump. They have no utility, and I think they need adjustments. Simple as that. Moving on next, we do have, sadly, the Affliction Warlock. Now, I'm going to say right off the bat, it's important to know that Affliction Warlock, they haven't been changed. So already I'm worried about them in that standpoint for Mythic Plus. My biggest concern also is that their damage numbers don't look good in a raiding environment compared to last season where they were one of the best in the game also. So after the recent raid testing, they're doing low. In Mythic Plus, they're not looking great because they didn't get any adjustments to Vile Taint. And yeah, no, that's a problem. That's a problem. Don't get me wrong, they have crazy burst potential with the Soul Harvester tier set. It's doing some ridiculous numbers, like 20 million plus damage burst windows, absolutely. But outside of that, we're struggling very, very big to keep up our dots and keep everything rolling outside of those burst windows every 45 seconds. So they're struggling substantially out of that. I think both their hero talent trees have very good potential. The numbers just aren't there for the Hellcaller tier set right now when it comes to Wither. So I don't love that. I really like what they did with Shadow Priest. They gave them 2 charges to Shadow Crash. I think we need to see the same thing for Affliction Warlock. Not only that, Affliction is a spec that is supposed to be a dot spec, but you're sitting here spamming Malefic Rapture to deal all your damage, and it just doesn't feel good thematically or from a design standpoint, and I just don't love it for a dot spec. I don't like it. I think Affliction needs very, very substantial, you know, rotational adjustments. They have 2 really good hero talent trees. I think the design has to change. I think we need some adjustments for Affliction overall. Moving on next for the final C tier spec. Oh man, this one's gonna hurt. We have Unholy Death Knight. Now, sadly, they declined from last season. I think from a base rotational standpoint, the redesign feels good. They pruned a lot of stuff, and I think it makes going into their big burst windows a lot easier than before. And I like it. I find it fun. It feels kind of like how Retribution Paladin did when they pruned them. And if you know what I'm talking about, if you played Ret, it makes it feel a lot easier and just more simple to understand. The big pain points is that they absolutely gutted Blood Beast, so that's not an option heading into the new season. They took away Abomination Limb, which was one of their biggest reasons to bring them in a group. Your AMZ in a Mythic Plus environment got gutted, so it's really only great for raiding. And not only that, this last update, they AoE capped their bursting swords, which really, really sucks. So in an AoE damage sense, they got nerfed and they got hit pretty hard. Once again, I think rotationally, they're pretty fun. And the pruning of some of their abilities has been great. They just took away some things that made Unholy Death Knight Unholy Death Knight. They took away Abomination Limb. AMZ doesn't feel that good. And they took away their non-uncapped AoE, which kind of sucks. I think Desecrate is a pretty good ability to apply or pop those wounds. I love the new Legion of Souls ability. It deals a crap ton of damage. It's just, they have to address their biggest issue. And in case you didn't know what that was, their single target raid damage is absolutely bad. It's awful. It's atrocious. It's amongst one of the worst in the game. You are bottom tier in every testing that they did. So they have to fix that. If Mythic Plus, they're not dealing ridiculous damage, and they're not dealing at least average damage for raid, yeah, Unholy DK is in a lot of trouble right now, and I'm really worried about them. It makes no sense to me that personally they're getting all this attention, but somehow they're just getting worse and worse and worse as the weeks go by. So we're going to have to see how this changes in the upcoming weeks. Next up, though, we do have in the Send Help tier, Subtlety Rogue. Now, surprisingly, Sub Rogue did perform the best out of all the Rogue specs for the raid testing that happened over the last couple of weeks. But in terms of Mythic Plus, once again, they're looking to struggle heading into the new season because they didn't receive any changes. They didn't receive any changes at all. Both their tier sets seemed really, really boring and unintuitive. They have some fantastic burst windows with your Shadow Blades combined with, of course, your, Shadow Dance and other things going on, which feel pretty good. But improper usage of any of these cooldowns, yeah, you're going to get your ass kicked in terms of damage. I like to think of them as like the Fire Mage of melee DPS. Like, they have their Combustion, They have, you know, Shadow Blades with Shadow Dance. Improper usage of that, you're going to drop in the DPS numbers substantially. Honestly, from a general standpoint, I would have just liked some more interactions with their spells, man, because their hero talents and tier sets, they just feel so bland and passive compared to some other specs in the game right now, and I'm just not loving it. I'm just not a fan of rogues right now, and sadly, none of this just piques my interest at all. They feel bland, they feel boring, and they're definitely not keeping up in terms of damage to some of the other specs in the game. And improper usage of their cooldowns, you're going to get your ass whipped. And then, by far, the creme de la creme of specs that are just absolute ass tier is Fury Warrior. Listen, I'm going to make this very, very clear. I am so surprised Fury Warrior is getting no changes heading into the new season. With Mountain Thane, you probably have the worst tier set bonus in the entire game. I've done testing with this in a Mythic Plus environment, and it dealt about 1% of my damage overall. It is absolutely abysmal. From top to bottom, Fury Warrior needs a complete rework, and if it doesn't get changed at all heading into new season, they are going to be absolutely hot dog water. They are not going to do good. You're heavily AoE capped throughout Mythic Plus, so you're not going to perform well there. In the raid testing, you didn't really do good either. Your damage feels substantially lower than most classes in the game. You have a really high APM, but nothing to make up for it, like Outlaw, Rogue. Overall, Fury just feels terrible to play. And it's really, really sad because a spec that's supposed to be all about just unrelenting brute force, that's supposed to be brutal Fury, it deals no damage. How the hell does that happen? I don't know. I'm really worried about this spec in a general standpoint, and I'm really hoping they get some sort of overhaul heading into Midnight or big changes heading in the 0.5 patch, because we're in trouble right now if you're a Fury Warrior player. I don't love them at the moment. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, here is the full complete tier list on screen for you now. I know I'm going to have a lot of you disagree with me in the comment section below, and I think that's encouraged for these type of videos. So if you think I'm an idiot, let me know about it in the comment section below. I think there are a lot of really, really strong specs this season, and only a few specs that really seem to be lagging behind. Also, don't forget, we do stream pretty consistently throughout the week, so if you want to come hang out, goof off, ask questions live, let me know about it. Come check up on me on YouTube as well as Twitch, and if you're looking for a guild heading into the new season, listen up because we got an important message for you. One last note we wanted to make: if you're looking for a guild or people to progress through Mythic Plus with or raid with next season, the Comeback Kids are recruiting, and any and all players are welcome to come on down, play with us. We're looking to fill out some new members for the raid. Oh my god, we fucking did it. Oh my god, let's fucking go, bro. If you're on the Horde, you can simply just go to the guild tab and search up the Comeback Kids, and we should pop up. Make sure you do have the guild size on any so you can actually see us. Either way though, if it doesn't work, you just use the Discord link in the comment section below. Hop in there and verify, get yourself in, and then we can get you invited by you posting your name and server under the guild invite tab.